When Harry Met Sally is considered one of the greatest romantic comedies ever made. Critics call it timeless. It launched thousands of imitators. It gave us,
I'll have what she's having.
But this beloved film is a masterclass in teaching women how to accept the bare minimum. It reinforces friend zone propaganda that we're still dealing with today. And every adorable couple interviewed between scenes is a horrible example for relationships. This and other films just like it are fairy tales for adult women. And like all fairy tales, it teaches us some very dangerous lessons about love, friendship, and what we should accept from men. I'm Therese, and I'm back to once again ruin your childhood. Today we're getting into the rom-com genre, and just as its animated counterparts promote dangerous messages for little girls, rom-coms do the same for women. They solidified in the culture the same patriarchal scripts and romantic delusions that are still plaguing our relationships today. Before we get started, you know the drill. Love or hate, like and share, because the algorithm does not care. Basic plot of the film: Harry and Sally meet at the University of Chicago. Sally has a friend that Harry is dating, and they both got jobs in New York, so they decide to drive from Chicago to New York together after they graduate. And they have a conversation, and they talk about a few things, and then they don't meet again until about 5 or 6 years later. Then they run into each other at the airport, they end up being on the same flight, and they chat some more. A few years go by, then they run into each other again at a bookstore, and then they decide to become friends. One night, he's over at her apartment. She's crying that her ex-boyfriend is getting married. And then they start kissing, and then they have sex. And eventually, at the end of the film, they end up falling in love and getting married. That's the basic plot. By the way, in critiquing these films, I in no way mean to bash Nora Ephron or to undermine her talent as a writer. Nora Ephron was an incredibly talented writer who had tremendous success in Hollywood, which was rare for a woman. But she was working within a patriarchal system. In Hollywood, these rom-coms have a formula. There's a way you have to write them. So I don't know if she might have had another ending in mind. She might have written some of these films differently, but she may not have been allowed to write them in the way she wanted to, because the studio has a certain formula with what a romantic comedy, what a comedy film is and is supposed to be. Nora Ephron does, in this screenplay, show actually how well she knows men. Now, the storyline excuses the men's behavior, but clearly she understands men very well, which she should, because she was married to a guy named Carl Bernstein, who cheated on her, who could not remain faithful if his life depended on it. By the way, Carl Bernstein, the half of the journalist team Woodward and Bernstein that broke the Watergate story back in the 70s, he was the laziest, most unfaithful piece of shit. I'm pretty sure Bob Woodward did most of the heavy lifting with that reporting. He was not a good person. So after having the experience of being married to that guy, these selfish men who expect you to center their emotions, I think she definitely has experience dealing with these types of men, which explains why she's able to write these men so well. The only issue I have with her, with the story, is that these men are never held accountable for their actions. That's all. Let's start with those charming interview segments that are sprinkled throughout the film. You know the ones. Elderly couples recounting how they met, presented as proof that true love exists and lasts forever.
I was sitting with my friend Arthur Kornblum in a restaurant. It was a Horn-and-Darded cafeteria. And this beautiful girl walked in, and I turned to Arthur, and I said, "Arthur, you see that girl? I'm going to marry her." And 2 weeks later, we were married. And it's over 50 years later, and we are still married.
But what the movie doesn't tell you is that every single one of those couples is either from the Greatest Generation or the Silent Generation. They met and married long before 1974, when married women gained the legal right to vote, to have their own bank accounts and their own credit cards, before no-fault divorce, before the Civil Rights Act, before widespread access to birth control. These weren't necessarily happy marriages. They were marriages women couldn't leave. The film presents this as romantic, but the context is a world where women had almost no economic independence, where leaving a marriage meant poverty and social ostracism, where marital rape wasn't recognized as a crime. Lasting often meant trapped. This is the worst one.
A man came to me and said, "I found a nice girl for you. She lives in the next village, and she is ready for marriage. We were not supposed to meet until the wedding, but I wanted to make sure. So I sneaked into her village, hid behind a tree, watched her washing the clothes. I think if I don't like the way she looks, I don't marry her. But she looked really nice to me. So I said, okay, to the man. We get married. We married for 55 years.
So this guy stalked her to see if she was hot enough to marry. Notice there's no mention of whether or not she wanted to marry him. The woman just sits there and nods and doesn't speak. But 55 years later, they're still together. So, yay? The film uses these couples as its foundation. See? Marriage works. Look at those people who stayed together without ever questioning whether staying together was actually a choice for both parties or just the only option. This is the aspirational model the entire movie builds on. Relationships from an era when women's autonomy was so limited that leaving wasn't really possible for most women. And we're supposed to want what they have. Now let's talk about the film's central thesis, delivered by Harry in the opening car ride.
You realize, of course, that we could never be friends.
Why not?
What I'm saying is, and this is not a come on in any way, shape, or form, is that men and women can't be friends because the sex part always gets in the way.
That's not true. I have a number of men friends and there is no sex involved.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
You only think you do.
You're saying I'm having sex with these men without my knowledge?
No, what I'm saying is they all want to have sex with you.
They do not.
Do too.
They do not.
Do too.
How do you know?
Because no man can be friends with a woman that he finds attractive. He always wants to have sex with her.
Sally challenges this. She insists that men and women can be friends, but the film spends the next 90 minutes proving Harry right. When what the film actually proves is that men who believe this see every interaction with women as a potential sexual opportunity. If sex isn't on the table, they don't really see the point in being friends with a woman because they don't see women as people. This isn't a universal truth about human nature. It's a confession about how Harry views women. Notice that Sally does have male friends because she's capable of platonic relationships, but Harry isn't because he fundamentally does not see women as people who are worth knowing outside of a sexual or romantic context. The film presents Harry's view as wisdom, as a mature understanding of how the world really works. Sally is seen as naive. Harry is seen as realistic. And when they eventually end up together, the film validates his worldview. See, men and women can't be friends. It always becomes romantic. This is the foundation of the red pill friend zone ideology, the idea that women owe men something in exchange for friendship other than friendship, that male-female friendship is just a waiting room for sex, that if a man is nice to a woman and she doesn't reciprocate sexually, she's wronged him somehow. When Harry Met Sally didn't invent misogyny, obviously, but it did package this particular brand of it as romantic comedy wisdom. It taught an entire generation that persistence wins, that women's no doesn't really mean no, it just means not yet, that male-female friendship is impossible because men only see us as potential sexual partners. Let's talk about what Harry actually gets from Sally throughout the film and what she gets from him. Sally is Harry's emotional support system. When he's devastated about his divorce, who does he talk to? Sally. When he's depressed at 2 a.m., who talks him through it? Sally. When he bumps into his ex-wife at the Sharper Image and sees that she's moved on, who does he take his rage and pain out on? Sally. And not just Sally, he shows up at Jess and Marie's apartment, demanding that they process his feelings with him.
Jess, Marie, do me a favor for your own good. Put your name in your books right now before they get mixed up and you don't know whose is whose. Because someday, believe it or not, you'll go 15 rounds over who's going to get this coffee table. This stupid wagon wheel Roy Rogers garage sale coffee table.
I thought you liked it.
I was being nice!
Marie and Jess have just moved in together. They're just beginning to build their own relationship. They're picking out furniture. They're arguing about a coffee table. But Harry needs an audience for his emotional crisis and proceeds to make his feelings everybody else's problem. And to Sally's credit, she calls Harry out on how he's using sex with strangers in order to process the anger and grief of his divorce.
I know, I shouldn't have done it.
Harry, you're going to have to try and find a way of not expressing every feeling that you have every moment that you have them.
Oh, really?
Yes. There are times and places for things.
Well, the next time you're giving a lecture series on social graces, would you let me know? Because I'll sign up.
Hey, you don't have to take your anger out on me.
Oh, I think I'm entitled to throw a little anger your way, especially when I'm being told how to live my life by Miss Hospital Corners.
What's that supposed to mean?
I mean, nothing bothers you. You never get upset about anything.
Don't be ridiculous.
What? You never get upset about Joe. I never see that back up on you. How is that possible? Don't you experience any feelings of loss?
I don't have to take this crap from you.
If you're so over Joe, why aren't you seeing anyone?
I see people!
See people. Have you slept with one person since you broke up with Joe?
What the hell does that have to do with anything? That will prove I'm over Joe because I fucked somebody? Harry, you're gonna have to move back to New Jersey because you slept with everybody in New York, and I don't see that turning Helen into a faint memory for you.
This is emotional labor, the invisible work of managing other people's feelings, and Sally bears the brunt of it. The film presents it as, this is what friends do, but notice the direction that this labor flows. Sally is always available, always patient, always ready to absorb Harry's feelings. What does Harry offer her? Criticism, mostly. He tells her she's too picky about food, calls her high maintenance, mocks her for having standards.
Ooh, Ingrid Bergman. Now she's low maintenance.
Low maintenance?
There are two kinds of women, high maintenance and low maintenance.
And Ingrid Bergman is low maintenance?
And LM, definitely.
Which one am I?
You're the worst kind. You're high maintenance, but you think you're low maintenance.
I don't see that.
You don't see that? Waiter, I'll begin with a house salad, but I don't want the regular dressing. I'll have the balsamic vinegar and oil, but on the side. And then the salmon with the mustard sauce, but I want the mustard sauce on the side. On the side is a very big thing for you.
Well, I just want it the way I want it.
I know, high maintenance.
And the real devastating part is when Sally realizes that she was the placeholder girlfriend for her ex-boyfriend Joe. He breaks up with her and proceeds to get engaged to someone else only a few months later. And then Sally has this crushing realization that Joe might have wanted to get married, but he just didn't want to marry her. He just didn't want to be alone. And Sally was there. She was the woman he dated until he found the real woman he wanted to marry, his dream girl. And we've all seen the numerous TikTok videos about the experience of being the placeholder girlfriend or the placeholder wife, that men will date or even marry women they don't love, that they don't even like, just because they don't want to be alone. And also, of course, because they'd like a woman around to perform a bunch of unpaid domestic and emotional labor. The film treats this moment as Sally's wake-up call, that she should be with Harry instead. But her real wake-up call should be men who see women as interchangeable emotional support systems until the one comes along are not good partners. And Harry has given Sally no evidence that he sees her any differently than Joe did. There's a scene that perfectly encapsulates how men in this film view women, when Harry and Sally try to set each other up with their friends Marie and Jess.
Whenever I read Jimmy Breslin, it's as if he's leaving some kind of a wake-up call for the city of New York, you know?
So what do you mean by a wake-up call?
Well, he's saying that actually got people in the city, people in welfare, you've got
an art director.
Would I have seen any of your windows?
Did you see the Barney's thing a couple of weeks ago? I did a thing like hostages.
Or the people in blindfolds?
Yeah, I thought it was like late 80s.
it's macho. I don't think
It's interesting.
Let's just say I'm really just not a big fan of Jimmy Breslin.
Well, he's the reason I became a writer, but that's not important.
Harry brings his friend Jess to meet Sally, and Jess is kind of rude to her. He's dismissive, uninterested, incessantly talking about his favorite writer, Jimmy Breslin, because Sally isn't performing femininity in a way that appeals to him. She's not agreeing with him, she's asking her own questions, and reveals that she's actually not a fan of his favorite author. She's just being herself, but that's not enough. But when Marie quotes Jess's own writing back to him, fawning over his talent, telling him how brilliant he is, suddenly Jess is interested.
Well, I'm going to start with the grilled radicchio.
Jess, Sally is a great orderer. Not only does she always pick the best thing on the menu, but she orders it in a way that even the chef didn't know how good it could be.
I think restaurants have become too important.
Oh, I agree. Restaurants are to people in the 80s what theater was to people in the 60s. I read that in a magazine.
I wrote that.
Get out of here.
No, I did. I wrote that.
I've never quoted anything from a magazine in my life. That's amazing. Don't you think that's amazing? And you wrote it?
I also wrote Pesto is the quiche of the 80s.
Get over yourself.
I did.
Where did I read that?
New York Magazine.
Sally writes for New York Magazine.
You know, that piece had a real impact on me. I mean, I don't know that much about writing, but
it spoke to you, and that pleases me.
I mean, I really you have to admire people who can be that articulate.
Nobody has ever quoted me back to me before.
By the way, when a guy says that Jimmy Breslin is his favorite writer, that should be an immediate red flag. Jimmy Breslin was hailed as the quintessential New York newsman. Gritty, brash, working class hero with a pen. But what gets buried in that mythology is how openly and aggressively misogynistic he was. This wasn't just the casual sexism of the era. Breslin once called a fellow journalist a slut on the air, dismissed women reporters as inferior, and bragged about using the C word in professional settings. His contempt for women wasn't subtle. It was sport. And yet he was lionized, canonized, taught in J school. The industry bent over backwards to call his cruelty and bullying color. And that tells you everything you need to know about Jess and what kind of man he is. This is the scene that shows us that male attraction often really is not about seeing a woman for who she is, but about seeing yourself reflected back. Jess isn't attracted to Marie because of anything particular about her as a person. He's attracted to her because she makes him feel good about himself. She's the mirror that shows him the version of himself that he wants to see. And the film presents this once again as romantic, as meant to be. Marie and Jess move in together. They're the success story. But what we actually witnessed was a woman performing admiration to win male attention. This is pick me energy. This is women learning that the way to a man's heart is to center his ego, reflect his brilliance back to him, make yourself small so that he can feel big. Sally doesn't do this with Jess, so he's not interested. But she does do it with Harry, constantly managing his emotions, absorbing his criticism, being available for his needs. And eventually he decides she's worth it. Let's talk about that food ordering scene.
What can I get you?
I'll have a number 3.
I'd like the chef salad, please, with the oil and vinegar on the side and the apple pie a la mode.
Chef and apple a la mode.
But I'd like the pie heated, and I don't want the ice cream on top. I want it on the side, and I'd like strawberry instead of vanilla if you have it. If not, then no ice cream, just whipped cream, but only if it's real. If it's out of a can, then nothing.
Not even the pie?
No, just the pie, but then not heated.
Uh-huh.
What?
Nothing.
They discuss the way she orders at restaurants later in the film when they become friends. And Harry's response? Oh, you're high maintenance. Sally defends herself saying, I just want it the way I want it. And Harry says, I know, high maintenance. Here's what's actually happening there. Sally knows what she wants and asks for it. The restaurant offers these modifications. She's not demanding anything that's unreasonable, but having preferences, having standards, knowing what you want and asking for it, that makes you high maintenance when you're a woman. And there's another layer to this. The way women order food at restaurants is heavily influenced by diet culture, by decades of messaging that we need to be thin to be lovable, by the social pressure to perform femininity correctly, which includes monitoring every bite, every calorie, every potential judgment about our bodies. And with the numerous diet trends we've had since this film was made, paleo, raw, low carb, gluten-free, this has gotten even worse. Sally ordering things on the side is not neurotic, but the film mocks her for it, presents her preferences as evidence of her being difficult. High maintenance becomes code for woman with standards and boundaries, a woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to ask for it. And remember what Harry said about why he got married?
Helen comes home from work and she says, I don't know if I want to be married anymore. Like it's the institution, like it's nothing personal, just something she's been thinking about in a casual way. I'm calm. I say, why don't we take some time to think about it? Don't rush into anything.
Yeah, right.
Next day, she says she's thought about it and she wants a trial separation. She just wants to try it, she says, but we can still date. Like this is supposed to cushion the blow. I got married so I could stop dating.
I got married so I could stop dating. Marriage for Harry was partly an escape from effort, from having to care what women want, from having to see women as people with preferences that matter. The message to women is that if you have standards, you're difficult. If you know what you want, you're too picky. If you ask for what you need, you're high maintenance and unlovable. The ideal woman is low maintenance, which means a woman who doesn't ask for anything. Throughout the film, Sally and her friends obsess over the biological clock, over timelines for marriage and children, over being chosen before it's too late. Marie says it explicitly when she's in bed with Jess.
Tell me I'll never have to be out there again.
You will never have to be out there again.
Tell me I'll never have to be out there again. Marriage is presented as an escape from the dating market, not as partnership, not as love, but as relief that the search is finally over. This is the biological clock narrative that has pressured women for decades. And the truth is, it's largely a myth. Yes, female fertility declines with age, but so does male fertility. Significantly, older fathers are associated with increased risks of miscarriage, schizophrenia, and other complications. As sperm quality degrades, genetic mutations increase. Men's reproductive window is actually smaller than women's when you account for health outcomes for both the mother and the child. But culture only panics about women's biological clocks because it serves patriarchy to make women feel desperate. When women feel like time is running out, that's when they'll settle. They accept less. They marry men like Harry, men who see marriage as not having to go through this anymore, rather than a partnership. And notice how Sally and her friends talk about relationships. They talk about them as competition, as a race to be chosen. Their friendships are supportive, sure, but there's an undercurrent of, I need to get picked before she does. It's very competitive. This is serious pick-me energy. Women competing for male approval rather than building solidarity with each other. The film presents this as normal female friendship, but what it actually is women who've internalized the message that their value comes from being chosen by men. Here's what When Harry Met Sally actually is. It's a fairy tale for women. Just like Disney princess movies teach little girls that love means being chosen by a prince, these rom-coms teach grown women that love means being chosen by a man who finally decides that you are worth the effort. When Harry Met Sally teaches us that male persistence overcomes female boundaries, Harry keeps pursuing Sally even after she says no, that women should lower their standards. Sally's too picky about food, about men, about everything. That marriage is the ultimate goal regardless of the quality of a relationship. That men doing the bare minimum is swoon-worthy. He remembers that she likes things on the side. Wow, what a guy. Women's friendships are competitive, not cooperative. Emotional labor is what women owe to men. Being a placeholder girlfriend is just part of finding the one. Men only see women as potential sexual partners, and that's fine. The film ends with Harry's grand gesture, running in the snow to a New Year's Eve party to tell Sally that he loves her.
I'm sorry, Harry. I know it's New Year's Eve. I know you're feeling lonely, but you just can't show up here, tell me you love me, and expect that to make everything all right. It doesn't work this way.
Well, how does it work?
I don't know, but not this way.
How about this way? I love that you get cold when it's 71 degrees out. I love that it takes you an hour and a half to order a sandwich. I love that you get a little crinkle above your nose when you're looking at me like I'm nuts. I love that after I spend a day with you, I can still smell your perfume on my clothes. And I love that you are the last person I want to talk to before I go to sleep at night. And it's not because I'm lonely, and it's not because it's New Year's Eve. I came here tonight because when you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible.
And this is presented as Harry's romantic growth. He's finally ready. He's finally realized that she's the one. But this isn't growth. This is, I choose you, not I see women as people now. You see the difference? And we're supposed to swoon over this shit. The film presents Harry's declaration as the ultimate romantic gesture. He lists all the little things that he loves about her, the way she's cold when it's 71 degrees out, the way it takes her an hour and a half to order a sandwich. These same quirks that he spent the entire movie criticizing, now they're adorable? But here's what's missing. Any evidence that Harry has fundamentally changed how he sees women. Any sign that he's capable of friendship without sexual attraction. Any indication that he won't continue to use Sally for her emotional labor while giving her criticism in return. The film wants us to believe that love conquers all. That Harry's grand gesture erases the patterns that we've watched for 2 hours. That Sally should be grateful that he finally chooses her. This is the fairy tale. Prince Charming arrives, not to save you from a tower, but to save you from being alone. And you should be thankful that he showed up at all. So what would a healthy version of this story look like? Well, it would require Harry to actually see women as human beings worthy of friendship outside of sexual attraction, to prove that he's capable of platonic relationships with women, not just with Sally after they become romantic, but with women in general. It would require him to do his own emotional labor instead of outsourcing it to Sally, to show up for her emotional needs the way she shows up for his, to stop criticizing her preferences and start respecting them. It would require Sally to have standards and keep them, to refuse to be someone's placeholder, to demand a partner who sees relationship effort as a joy, not as a burden. It would require both of them to examine why they believe men and women can't be friends, and recognize that belief as misogyny, not as wisdom about human nature. It would require the film to acknowledge that those adorable old couples stayed together due to limited options, not unlimited love. That we can do better than aspiring to relationships that were formed in an era when women had no choice. But the film doesn't do any of this, because it's not actually about healthy love. It's about teaching women to accept less and calling it romance. Like most rom-coms, When Harry Met Sally is an instruction manual for accepting the bare minimum. It teaches women that having standards makes us difficult, that our biological clock is just ticking away while men have all the time in the world, that male-female friendship is impossible because men only see us as potential sexual partners, that we should aspire to marriages from an era when women had no choice, that being a placeholder girlfriend is just part of the journey, that men doing the bare minimum emotional work is swoon-worthy, that our value comes from being chosen, not from choosing. The couples in those interview segments didn't stay together because their love was so strong. They stayed together because divorce meant poverty, social ostracism, and potentially losing access to their children. What exactly is romantic about that? Rom-coms are fairy tales for women. And like all fairy tales, they're teaching us, women, to accept our place in a system that doesn't serve us. Disney princesses waited to be chosen by princes. Rom-com heroines wait to be chosen by men who finally decide that they're worth the effort. The difference is that we're old enough now to know better. We can recognize that a man who says he got married so he wouldn't have to date anymore is telling you exactly how he sees partnership, as an escape from effort, not as a joy. We can see that a man who can't be friends with women because the sex part always gets in the way is confessing that he doesn't actually like women, that he doesn't see women as people. We can understand that high maintenance is just code for women having standards, and having standards is not a flaw. We can reject the biological clock panic that pressures us to settle before the time runs out, when the reality is that men's reproductive health declines just as significantly as ours does. We can refuse to be placeholders, to do all of the emotional labor, to shrink ourselves so that the men can feel big, to compete with other women for male approval instead of building solidarity. When Harry Met Sally gave us, I'll have what she's having, but what she's having is a relationship where she manages his emotions, absorbs his criticism, and waits for him to decide if she's worth it. I don't want what she's having, and neither should you. Thanks for watching. See you next time. If you enjoy this kind of content, I invite you to watch my series, Witches, Whores, and Rebels, a feminist history of patriarchal capitalism and how to burn it down. It's a 3-part series with a 90-page companion guide that gives you the history of how we got here, centering the witch hunts, women's resistance, and providing a framework for how we move forward from here. The link is in the description when you're ready.